Well, thanks everybody for coming. Um, just to kind of give you a little bit about HitSense and what we do. We are a mobile app and game developer. We did start in the US, and kind of one of our big things at HitSense is we like the idea of sharing data and sharing kind of our research that we've figured out. So that's we think that the market is big enough for everybody, and so we like to put this information out there. And so it was said, I'm the president of HitSense. I started the company when I was in high school, and a little over a year ago, I moved to Shanghai, China. And so this is a picture of myself and my wife a year ago when we moved in, and it's definitely been a very interesting experience. I have worked exclusively with Chinese employees, so that's been a kind of a big learning curve for me, but it's been very exciting at the same time. So I'm really going to be talking specifically about the Chinese market today, and I'm going to go over several different categories. One of them is the fragmentation of the market. Everybody kind of hears how fragmented the market is compared to the rest of the world, and I'll be reviewing that with you. As well as the Chinese payment systems. There's definitely different payment styles that are out there, and so that's, I've got some things to show. And then player behavior. It's been very interesting kind of looking at players and from a Chinese player to a kind of a Western style player and see how they play differently and how they interact inside of a game. And then some tutorial training things and localization versus culturalization. So as you've probably all heard a lot about, there is a huge breakup in the Android stores. And so there's over 100 different Android stores that are on the market. And I kind of break them up, they're kind of broken up into three different categories, one being the carrier stores. So the actual cell phone carriers have several different markets that they'll put your games in. But then we also have third-party kind of tier 1 and tier 2 stores that will display or share Android apps. And then on top of that, also all the hardware manufacturers have their own stores. So where it comes to the amount of like LTE and even Samsung and Huawei and all these guys, they have their own stores that come pre-installed on the phones that they'll share apps with. So there's different areas you have to focus on. One of the things that I find really interesting about working in the Chinese market is kind of how the apps get downloaded. And so right now, as of 2014, 57% of the Android apps are actually downloaded from a mobile assistant program. So what that means is that people are getting on their computer, finding the app, downloading it, and then plugging their phone into the USB and installing it. And kind of the reason for that is just limited bandwidth, and then a lot of people don't have Wi-Fi in their home. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. In the rest of the world, we're kind of looking at buying ad campaigns on the phones, but here we spend a lot of times buying ads actually in the desktop applications. So another thing that we kind of talk about is the Chinese mobile payment systems. And so this is broken up into two different categories. One is carrier billing, and the other is third-party payment systems. So depending on what kind of game you have will depend on normally which route you go. The carrier billing is more for a casual game, and then you have the third-party payment system, which is more your mid-core to hardcore games that have a little more pricier purchases in them. So I actually have an example of some of the payment systems and what they actually look like in China. So we have three main carriers in China: China Mobile, China Unicom, and China Telecom. And actually we have China Unicom has 2 SDKs and China Mobile has 2 SDKs. So we end up with 5 different SDKs that we have to integrate to do regular carrier billing, which this is actually an SMS billing system. So that means that whenever somebody makes a purchase, it sends a text message. You don't have to have an internet connection to do it. So you can make a purchase from anywhere. The payments are limited between 1 RMB and 30 RMB on the carrier payment side. So that's about 16 cents US to $4.80 US. So you can't have anything outside of that going through the SMS billing system. So when we talk about mid to hardcore games, we really get a lot into like the third-party payment systems, which really AliPay is kind of the PayPal competitor of China. They're kind of controlling 59% of the market. So there's a huge share of the payments going through that system. And the Union Pay is the local Chinese payment system that, like your credit card. So that's kind of the breakdown percentages. So one thing that I find extremely interesting is analyzing the Chinese player behavior. And I've learned a lot about actually just working with Chinese developers and working with people that are actually into the game and having very long, lengthy conversations with them. So one thing, I've got a few different things here, but one thing that I've found interesting is a lot of their payment systems or the way that they are playing games are based on like lottery and luck. So here's an example of a game in China that's been translated. And so the idea here is that you have a certain success rate and you can spend more money to improve that success rate. So where it could say, for example, you have a 90% chance or an 85% chance, and you can spend a certain amount of money to increase that. So I like to present this to people that basically you could spend money in the app to increase your odds, but then you could still not successfully make that purchase. So in a Western style app, I have a hard time. I know me personally, if I was to spend money to increase my odds and still fail, I'd be pretty upset. They also do a lot with VIP cards. There's a lot of VIP player statuses that gives you a VIP position for a certain amount of time. It'll give you discounts on purchases. Some of these things are coming to the Western market, but it's very popular in the Chinese game. And then also random style plays. You can spend money, roll dice, and depending on which dice come out, you could get between something that's okay to something that's great. So you're spending money for something. You could get something great, but you might just get something that is okay. And we hear about this a lot, lucky draws. So a lot of the games will have kind of lucky draw systems in it so that as the user every day can go and spin a wheel or actually get something based off of this. So they could get something good or bad. And then also I have up here there's another thing here where you fuse material together and you've got like a 57% chance that it's going to be successful. So another place where you can basically lose what you've earned. Also user training. Whenever I first came over here and brought our first game to the market, I showed it to a lot of Chinese channels, and I'd show it to them and they'd say, you got to have a tutorial added to your game. And I'd say, okay, so we'd add a tutorial, and then I'd show the next person, they'd say, hey, you need to add a tutorial to your game. And I'm like, well, we already did, so we added more. And basically every single time it was just the same theme is you got to keep adding a tutorial. And I actually have a kind of an example of one of our games that we developed and showing the difference between what we released in our global version, which we released in our Chinese version. So here you'll see one of our games, Draw a Stickman Epic, was Tablet Game of the Year last year by the Webbies. And so in our English version, it just, it was very simple. It just said, draw a stickman, and the user just kind of started. In the Chinese version, we were a little more explicit, told them exactly what to do, and then actually gave them kind of pictures that they could use to help them draw the stickman. In the global version, we said touch anywhere to walk. This was very confusing to a lot of the Chinese players. So instead of saying touch anywhere, we had to say touch right here in this exact spot to make him walk to this one area. Same thing, you would then draw a friend in the game. Here we had to actually give him a box and draw an arrow and say this is where you need to actually draw your friend. And then our global version said just follow me. That was enough. our Chinese version, we had to say, you need to come and click right here, and this will make you follow me. Global version, it just said, here's how do you use your fire pencil. Basically, the user could draw fire anywhere. It would burn things on fire. That's how they would get through the level. We dropped the user in the middle of the level, and that was it. We didn't do anything else. And people would learn, they'd figure it out, and they would try to say, okay, what do I need to do? And they would figure it out. In our Chinese version, instead, we would actually say, okay, you're in this new level, you need to click here and walk forward a little bit to kind of show them how to walk. Then we'd say, okay, you need to click this fire pencil down here on the bottom right-hand corner. Then we would say, you need to draw a fire right here on this fence so you can burn it. And then we would say, okay, now you need to click the OK button. And then after they burn the fence, they needed to have a little bit more information to say, okay, Chinese players would play and they'd say, now what? I burned the fence down, what am I supposed to do? So after they burn the fence, we'd say, okay, now you need to find the exit, or maybe find puzzle pieces or find diamonds. And on top of that, we added arrows in the game. So the arrows actually showed them which way they needed to walk to get to the exit. And if that wasn't enough, we added a map so that users would have a full map. And if that wasn't enough, we highlighted where the actual exit was, and we put a question mark, and we actually gave hints for the game. So it was a very, very different starting process for this game from our Chinese version to our global version. And really what happened is just this was just came to be after showing it over and over and over again to different publishers or different stores or channels inside of the Chinese market. So, you kind of hear a lot about localization, especially at a conference like this. We tend to call what we do more of a culturalization. And so if you're really looking at building a global game, you kind of have to start thinking about how you want to approach it. And so if you look here as an actual example, so we have where we had a tree on the left version. On the right one, we've got this Chinese lantern. We actually changed the trees to bamboo. All of the characters were completely changed to be more Chinese oriented. Also, our main splash screen. This is our global version, just very standard. And this is our Chinese version. So we actually used a Chinese temple. You have to come up with a Chinese name. You can't use an English name. And we had to do everything. We integrated with the local WeChat program, so all of that was put in. So now we kind of say, Chinese market, should I consider it? I've been here for over a year, and so I think it's a great question that everybody wonders if they should go through all of the work to get there. And so we actually have had kind of a partnership with a Chinese company called Talking Data, and they're one of the leading mobile data service providers in China. They are on over 550 million unique devices, and they have over 25,000 applications therein. And so we've been working with this company to kind of do a lot of the analytics. They are here at this event, and they've been doing a lot of presentations, but they're basically the leader when it comes to Chinese data. And so Talking Data actually put out this report with a partnership with SuperData. And so this shows the United States revenue budget at $3.2 billion, and the Chinese, passing the $3 billion mark with a global, revenue of $21.6 billion. So obviously there's a huge amount of potential money in this market. The other thing is the amount of smartphones. So we've got 550 million active smartphones that are in China today, and 528 million of those people are actually playing mobile games. So that's a huge amount of, huge amount of money, or huge amount of potential clients. And the way I like to tell people about this, a lot of these people that are getting these smartphones, it's the first phone they've ever had. It's the first smartphone. Consoles have been outlawed or have been illegal in China forever until recently, so they've never had a gaming console. They probably might not have been able to afford a PC, and so this is their first gaming device that they've ever had, and so they sit around on their phone and they play games for a long amount of time. Also, if you look at Chinese spending, there's over 53 million users spending on mobile games, and the ratio of spenders has been growing since the beginning of 2013, and it's almost approaching a 10% number of people that are actually playing games spending money, which is a huge amount. I find this really interesting. This is a stat also that Talking Data put out. And so what this shows is 39% of users will play a casual game as their first game. And I do like to think about this as a lot, like I said, a lot of these people are getting the mobile devices for the first time. And so their first thing they do is they go download all the games they've heard about, the Angry Birds, the Plants vs. Zombies, everything they've ever heard about. They go and download it and start playing it because they've probably never played it before. They've just seen friends or family play it. And then 45% of the money is actually spent first time inside of the casual game. So you get a large amount of money that's spent. And then also if you look at the average revenue per paid user, it's about $45 USD per month for Card Battle and about $19 USD per month for all paid users. So there's definitely a significant amount of money being spent. Card Battle and RPG definitely are a huge driving force for a lot of the revenue. So now I've given you the data, and obviously there's a lot of money to be had, but one thing we say is, what else do you need to know about the market? And so I will tell you personally, the reason I came to China is because we saw that our game was being pirated, and we noticed a significant amount of downloads of our paid premium app in China. And so we actually, myself and my twin brother, the other owner, we booked a ticket to China, and we flew over here and just said we're going to figure out what's going on. And one of the things that I'll say is if you are looking at going into China and you've already have the app published, you should look at your analytics. So this is something we noticed on our analytics for our paid apps. We had over 126 million views inside of our game. And you can see in February 2013, we had a spike of our premium app. So when this happened, we were definitely wondering, where all these downloads were coming from. And that's when we started asking questions, search around. So I like to tell people that if you have an app and you're looking at bringing it in China, it's already published, check your analytics and see if it's already there. We've been doing actually piracy reports for Western companies that are trying to figure out how much their app's already been used inside of the Chinese market. The other thing that you have to remember, and most of you probably heard about this, is the revenue share split is much different. And so in the rest of the world, we have iOS and we have Google Play and Amazon, and these guys are both doing app discovery and purchasing for us. In China, the payment systems are either going through the third-party payment systems, the AliPay, or they're going through the carrier billing. And so those guys are going to take 30% off the top, plus bad debt. There's a figure of money that doesn't get paid. After that, you're going to have to get your app actually distributed through the channels. So you've got app distribution, and so those guys are going to take another 30% for their part. And then if you actually want to get billing codes and do marketing and all that, you're going to need a publisher in China. And so they're probably going to split what's left. So you end up with about 20%. The way we looked at it was 20% of something is a lot better than 100% of nothing. But it is definitely a hard thing to swallow when you're trying to, when you're getting into the market and trying to getting used to having that 70% that's out there, and now it's not there anymore. There's also a big thing with pre-installs that are out there. A lot of people kind of putting the apps on phones pre-installed, And that's been another thing that's very different with the Chinese market than what we traditionally see elsewhere. So that's it. I'll take questions. This is the last one of the day, so I can hang around if anybody is interested about talking about any of those things, or we can ask questions.
I know. Any questions? I know it's late, but no.
They might want to see you personally.
Okay, I'll stick around if anybody wants to talk.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Get ready to party, dinner, drink tonight. Thank you.